you grew up in the mid-2000s, you probably remember seeing ads for a game called Wizard101. Released in September 2008 by KingsIsle, Wizard101 is a free-to-play, well, quote-unquote free-to-play, MMORPG geared mainly towards kids. On the surface, it looks like it has a pretty standard story. You're a young wizard who's the only one able to take down the evil necromancer Malastare. Surely there isn't much more to it than that, right? Well, there is more. A lot more. Hello everyone, I'm your favorite Catboy, and I'm here to take you through the story of Wizard101. Before we begin, I want to clarify a few things. First off, Wizard101 is a lot. It took me about 4 days just to write down everything that happened in Wizard City, not even counting how many days it took to write the script, so instead of doing one huge video, I'm instead opting to do a series of videos. I'll be detailing the main quest of Arc 1 and some of the side quests, since those offer a surprising amount of information about the lore. As for side worlds like Crab Alley and Wisteria, I'll be putting those in separate videos because while they are interesting, they aren't entirely plot relevant. Sound good? Great. Although there are many wizards we could be following on this journey, for these videos we'll be following Morgan Spellhunter, a necromancer who's brand new to Ravenwood. We're greeted by Headmaster Merle Ambrose, who says that we are a student with amazing potential, perhaps enough potential to save Wizard City and the Spiral as we know it. He also implies that we were taken from Earth, or a world similar to it. After determining our school, we're off to start our journey. We arrive in Golem Court and are greeted by the Headmaster and Gamma the Owl. Gamma gives us a small amount of information about how wizards work before the sky turns dark and a shadowy figure is seen in Golem Tower. We go with Headmaster Ambrose to investigate the issue. When we arrive, we discover it's Malastare, our main villain of the story. He sends his henchmen after you, but with guidance from Headmaster Ambrose, we defeat them and Malastare leaves, claiming he got what he came here for. We don't really see why he was there in the first place, but with him gone, we're able to begin orientation. Except that there's issues on Unicorn Way that Headmaster Ambrose wants us to sort out beforehand. There's been a sudden rise in undead creatures on that street, and nobody's really sure why. Headmaster Ambrose teleports us there, and we're able to see the damage for ourselves. A dark atmosphere chokes the street. Private Connolly, a guard stationed there, sends us to see Saren Ninechant, a fellow student who knows Unicorn Way well. He's been sent to help, but the skeletal pirates on the street scare him, and he's unable to face them to see what's going on. After we defeat some for him, some of them state that we'll be no match for that which rattles in the darkness. Saren isn't sure what that means, but he knows someone who might. We're sent to Lady Oriel, Warden of the Fairies. She lives in the hedge maze at the end of the street, and upon entering she regards us with suspicion, before eventually sensing light inside of us and asking for our help. Bone cages have been popping up all over the street. These cages contain a dark magic that corrupts all fairy folk who go near them. She wants us to free the fairies from the bone cages, as well as gather fairy dust from those already corrupted, so she can figure out who's done this. After we gather the fairy dust, we're thanked by them for freeing them, and Lady Oriel realizes that Rattlebones is behind this. Rattlebones was a ruthless tyrant in life, and in death he was banished to the underworld for his crimes. We don't know why he's back just yet, but we do know he's in the old Unicorn Way archives. He seems to be looking for something for Malastare, and after defeating him, we find out what that something is. A book that we later find out is called On the Trail to the Order of the Fang. That name will come up later. As we leave the archives, we find that the dark magic on the street is fading. Rattlebones is gone for good now. We take the book back to Headmaster Ambrose. He needs time to look into it and figure out why Rattlebones would want to give it to Malastare, but while he does that, we still have to go through enrollment. Enrollment mostly consists of meeting our teachers: Lydia Greyrose, the Ice Professor, Halston Baelstrom, the Storm Professor, Dahlia Falmea, the Fire Professor, Mulinda Wu, the Life Professor, Arthur Weathersfield, the Balance Professor, Cyrus Drake, the Myth Professor, and last but not least, our substitute teacher of Death Magic, Malorn Ashthorn. Out of all of these professors, only 6 of them have actual classrooms. Balance has no classroom in Ravenwood because the magic is very new and hails from Crocotopia, while Death has no classroom because the school mysteriously disappeared after the former professor, Malastare Drake, turned on Wizard City. Malorn Ashthorn is a fellow Death student, and until Headmaster Ambrose finds a substitute, we'll be learning spells from him. After orientation has been completed, we go back to Headmaster Ambrose, who has terrible news. While we were saving Unicorn Way, chaos erupted all over the rest of Wizard City. We're sent to Sergeant Muldoon in Old Town, who explains that the undead have broken free and are running amok. Before he can say much else, we notice a pet hanging around the tower of Old Judd, Wizard City's deceased graveyard keeper. This is where we get our first pet, who the game decided to name Smelly Bosco. Okay. Bosco leads us to the tower where we meet Penny Dreadful, who just lost to Old Judd. Old Judd has a plan to turn all of Wizard City's pets into undead. We work together with Penny to stop him and free the pets. Overall, it's a relatively uneventful questline, but keep Penny in mind. We'll be seeing her again later. Once the issue with Old Jed is settled, we're able to choose between 3 streets that need our help: Triton Avenue, Cyclops Lane, and Firecat Alley. Because Triton Avenue is the only street that's free to play and is so far the only fully revamped one, we're starting there. There are 3 students who have been sent there before us: Duncan Grimwater and Susie and Arthur Griffinbane. Sergeant Muldoon hasn't heard any word from them since they went in, and upon entering Triton Avenue, Arthur greets us and explains that something's broken the flow of storm magic through Triton Avenue. He and his sister Susie went to investigate, but the 2 have since been separated. His only real clue to what happened to her is a lightning eel he saw with Susie's wand in its jaws. Duncan Grimwater overhears us talking and offers his assistance. Duncan's a necromancer who came here because he felt an unusual surge of death magic. Talking to him reveals he idolizes Malistaire quite a bit, but don't worry, we'll get to that later. For now, Duncan is able to help us if we retrieve Susie's wand. Once we bring the wand to Duncan, we discover Susie is alive, but Duncan will need to perform a powerful ritual in order to really know where she is. To do this, he needs 2 anchors. Susie's wand is one, but he needs another, and he thinks he knows where we can get them. Rotting fodders on the street have been using storm magic, which is unusual for undead. Closer inspection reveals they're carrying storm amulets. Duncan is convinced that whoever enchanted the amulets must also have a connection to Susie's disappearance. We collect the storm amulets as Duncan requests, and we get nothing. Whoever's behind this is quite powerful and doesn't want anyone interfering with their plans. Luckily, Duncan has a plan B. He's able to break through the interference with a charged Lumina crystal, which we must get from the mill. With Duncan now successfully able to do the ritual, we discover that Susie was captured by the Harvest Lord, a powerful spirit who harvests innocent souls. He's enchanting storm amulets for his undead army in Galvanos Tower. Upon defeating him, he mentions a master's grand design, proclaiming that Triton Avenue is already doomed. Susie, who overheard the Harvest Lord's plans, explains that the Harvest Lord charged the storm amulets using the Tempest Nexus, which channels storm energy throughout Triton Avenue. Once he was done with the Tempest Nexus, he reversed the flow of energy in on itself, rigging it to explode, destroying all of Triton Avenue. We go to Halston Baelstrom, the Storm Professor, in hopes that he might know how to stop it. He gives us a master key. Using it on the Tempest Nexus stops it from exploding, saving Triton Avenue. While that is the end of the main questline, our work isn't entirely finished. After all, Duncan still hasn't been able to look into the surge of death magic. Now that we've saved Triton Avenue, we're able to help Duncan. He explains that the undead in Triton Avenue came from the haunted cave, which was previously sealed off for decades thanks to Malistaire. He's convinced that it's impossible for Malistaire to be behind any of this, because he was a hero. In fact, if he were here right now, Duncan has faith he'd be able to solve this mess. Since he isn't though, Duncan can figure out who's really behind this with our help. After defeating some field guards, we learned that they were summoned by Lord Nightshade, one of Wizard City's darkest tyrants. He was sealed in a tower in the haunted cave years ago, along with Rattlebones and the Harvest Lord. We go with Duncan to that tower so he can find out who broke the seals keeping them there, only for him to discover that it was Malistaire all along. Duncan is devastated, learning that his hero is turned against Wizard City. He goes to warn Malorn Ashthorn while we take on the other 2 streets. After a quick change and a promotion from Smelly Bosco to Sheriff Bosco, we go to Firecat Alley. Firecat Alley doesn't have nearly as detailed a story as Triton Avenue. Private Quinn is requesting help because he was supposed to meet with some of his Fire Elf friends, but none have arrived. What's more, they're acting hostile towards us. Private Quinn has a special bond with these Fire Elves. A long time ago, a Fire Elf named Phoebo saved Quinn's life with one of his arrows. Phoebo told Quinn that Fire Elf's arrows connect anything they touch thanks to their magic. After gathering these arrows, we bring them to a disgraced former alchemy teacher, Greta Darkettle. Greta resigned after Headmaster Ambrose didn't believe her concerns about the Death School, and has no interest in returning. She is, however, willing to help us find out what happened to the Fire Elves. After gathering all the ingredients needed for a spell, Greta discovers that the Fire Elves are under a curse laid by a banshee known as Bastilla Gravewind. To break the curse, we need a special potion containing a lock of the banshee's hair. After obtaining said potion, we go to face Prince Alacane Swiftarrow, leader of the elves. After we defeat him, the curse is lifted, and Phoebo himself appears and thanks us for saving the Fire Elves. After that, our work is finished. We report back to Headmaster Ambrose, who suspects something sinister is afoot. But there's no time to worry about that, because we still have one more street to worry about, Cyclops Lane. Cyclops Lane has a bit more of an in-depth story to it. It was originally overrun with undead, same as the other streets. But when Cyrus Drake was approached for assistance, he summoned an army of trolls, which took care of the undead but refused to leave afterwards. The Cyclops Legion was then summoned to take care of the trolls, but they too refused to leave, and even went back on their word to protect the street. That's where we come in. We meet up with Nolan Stormgate, who was sent to fix Cyclops Lane by Professor Drake himself. He holds himself in high regard and doesn't trust that we have the skills to properly help him. We have to prove ourselves to him by collecting a powerful death artifact from the dark cave known as the Ruined Skull. After retrieving it, Nolan gives us real work. Some students have gone missing and we need to figure out where they went. We recover a ransom note from some trolls. It's addressed to someone known as M, and reveals the missing students were kidnapped by General Achilles, leader of the Cyclops Legion. We bring this news to Cyrus Drake, hoping he can help. Unfortunately, our hopes are in vain. Professor Drake is extremely unhelpful, making us run errands for him and even making us hand-deliver a letter to Headmaster Ambrose, requesting our expulsion from Ravenwood. After some encouraging words from the headmaster, we're sent back to Nolan empty-handed. Luckily, he's cooked up a plan. Cyclops are honor-bound creatures, so if we can sneak into Achilles' tower and challenge him to a fight, he can't say no, and he also can't keep the students captured if we defeat him. It's revealed prior to beating him that this honor is the only reason the Cyclops are keeping the students anyways, and after defeating him, we bring news of what happened to Headmaster Ambrose. With all 3 streets saved, the headmaster has a suspicion that all 3 were related somehow. He thinks he knows who's behind this, but in order to be sure, he needs to access the old library archives, which are locked. The key is in a tower that is now haunted by a ghost named Falgaze. We defeat Falgaze, and Headmaster Ambrose's suspicions are confirmed. These attacks are being led by Lord Nightshade from Duncan's quest earlier. We go to Lord Nightshade's tower and fight him, and upon defeating him we find a journal and a mysterious skeleton key. Upon bringing these items to Headmaster Ambrose, we learn of a door behind the waterfall at Rainbow Bridge. We go to investigate and discover that the Death School is there. Dworgen, the replacement Death Teacher, is there as well, and he's been unaware that the school fell. We return to Headmaster Ambrose and report our findings. While we were out, he discovered that Malistaire has gone to Krakatopia in order to find the Order of the Fang and a book that they possess. It's up to us to go to Krakatopia and find that book before he does. But first, we have some unfinished business in Wizard City. Our first quest involves Bartleby, the large tree in the middle of Ravenwood. Recently he hasn't been feeling well. Ever since his eye was stolen, he's had trouble remembering things. Headmaster Ambrose gives us a potion that might help. When we give the potion to Bartleby, he warns Headmaster Ambrose to beware of Malistaire, saying he comes at night to torment Bartleby and that Headmaster Ambrose needs to find the one to defeat him. We bring this information back to Headmaster Ambrose, who explains that Bartleby used to have 2 eyes. They were gifts from Lady Nightstar, the grandmother of Ravens and Bartleby's sister. One of these eyes showed Bartleby the past, while the other showed the future. Malistaire stole the Eye of History. It's a fairly simple quest, but with Bartleby helped, we can move on to someone else. Remember Penny Dreadful? We're going to be helping her next. She's a brand new student from Marleybone, and she was excited to learn necromancy from Malistaire, who is an old family friend of her parents. Unfortunately, her forms are missing. Headmaster Ambrose didn't get a chance to approve them. We get the paperwork signed and help Penny with her coursework. After helping her with that, she asks us to give a letter to Prospector Zeke, a man who runs an interspiral mail delivery service. The letter is for her adopted parents in Marleybone. She also tells us more about Malistaire. According to her, Malistaire was a hero and an inspiration to Penny. She doesn't understand why he'd turn evil out of the blue. We take the letter to Prospector Zeke, who's happy to deliver it. He also gives us a package from Penny's parents addressed to her. When we go to give it to her, she's gone. She left her spellbook behind with a note. She went to the dark cave in hopes of finding Malistaire and asking him why he's doing all this. We find her and she says that she didn't find anything. In hopes of cheering her up, we give her the package from her parents, which is filled with pet snacks. Penny doesn't have any pet to speak of, but as thanks for being a good friend, she gives a snack to us, and that's the end of it. Sylvia's Saga is our last questline in Wizard City for now. Headmaster Ambrose fears that Malistaire might have been contacting Death students, and sends us to ask Duncan Grimwater if he's been contacted by Malistaire recently. Duncan says he hasn't been contacted by him, and is upset that Headmaster Ambrose blames Malistaire every time something is wrong. He says Headmaster Ambrose has tried convincing Duncan to learn a different school of magic, even suggesting he try life, but Duncan refuses. Duncan finds out that we don't know what happened to Malastaire's wife, Sylvia Drake, so he suggests we talk to Gloria Crendel, who's an old friend of hers. After talking to her, we find out that Sylvia Drake was the life professor before Moolinda Wu. Before Gloria says any more, she asks a favor of us. Sergeant Skullsplitter seems to have gotten his hands on a scrapbook Gloria and Sylvia used to share. Sergeant Skullsplitter won't allow us to have the scrapbook because he seems to be under the impression we're getting this from Malastair. He mentions denying Malastair any kindness after what Malastair denied him in life, but what exactly Malastair denied him is unclear. Nonetheless, we defeat him and take the scrapbook, returning it to Gloria. As thanks, she tells us more about what happened.
Now let's see. Ah, yes. Sylvia had such a wonderful laugh. It was so sad when she got sick. Got a nasty cold and wouldn't get better. They tried everything to heal her, but nothing worked. Imagine the greatest life professor being struck down like that. She was dying, and that was that. Poor Malastair couldn't stand it. It broke his heart having to let her go. He was never the same afterwards. He withdrew from his colleagues, even from his brother Cyrus. Well, thanks for bringing the scrapbook back to me, child. I am forever grateful.
Shortly after, he left the school. The first time we meet Malastair, he's already evil and doing terrible things. But these quests give us a deeper look into who Malastair was before all this happened. To us, Malastair is just an evil that needs to be defeated, but to many, many people in Wizard City, Malastair was a hero, an inspiration, one of the greatest necromancers of our time, and more. We see firsthand that many of his students aren't willing to accept that he's turned on them. We hear tale after tale of his heroics, of his compassion, but we never see it for ourselves. All we see is a cruel, evil man. All the kindness that Malastair had in him is gone, and after hearing about what happened to his wife, it all makes sense. Malastair is turned against the world because the world turned against him by taking away Sylvia. Whatever he's planning has to have her in mind, and we need to stop it. If you made it this far into the video, I'd just like to thank you. Wizard101 has been a big interest of mine for quite some time, and this is very much a passion project. The next video I work on is probably going to be Crab Alley and Colossus Boulevard, and then I'll work on Crocotopia. If you have any questions about the video or the information I presented, feel free to comment down below and I'll try to answer them. I tried to keep this as brief as possible. But with all that being said, this is your fave Catboy, and I'm signing off.